Alrighty, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome. My name is Ben, and thank you for joining us for the Culture and Nature Festival Classic Recipes from Brazil webinar. My name is Ben from Port Phillip EcoCentre, and before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation and recognize their continuing connection to lands, waters, and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. A few things before we get started into this webinar today, a few things with housekeeping, making sure that all the participants that are involved in this webinar to stay muted if possible. Advise participants in particular that if they want to ask questions, you can through the Q&A app right at the bottom of the tools section that you can see. The chat function is off for all participants for the record if you decide to try and chat with one another. Now, the recipe instructions will be emailed out after this event, and this webinar is recorded on EcoCentre's YouTube channel, EcoCentre TV. There are plenty more events tonight and tomorrow. Make sure you go to ecocentre.com/CNF 2021. Without further ado, I'm going to be introducing Fernanda, who is our presenter tonight. Fernanda is from a city in South Brazil called Belo Horizonte. I'm pretty sure I butchered that again, but that's perfectly fine. She moved to Melbourne in 2019 to conduct her PhD research, which sounds fascinating, and since then has been volunteering at the Eco Centre, participating in diverse activities, particularly gardening, which is one of her great passions. Welcome, Fernanda.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and to share this recipe with you all. So yeah, let's go to the video. I hope you like it and looking forward to any questions after that. Oh, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Fernanda, and I'm very happy to share with you one of my favorite Brazilian recipes today. This recipe is called Feijão Tropeiro. So feijão means bean in Portuguese, and tropeiro is the name of the merchants that we used to have in Brazil during the colonial period, that were traveling across the central west and southeast regions of Brazil. So we are going to use today azuki beans, which is a type of bean that's a bit easier to cook than the other ones, but in theory you can use any kind of bean that you wish. So beans are the main ingredient of this dish, together with farofa. So today we are going to use a seasoned type of farofa that you can buy here in Melbourne quite easily in Latin American shops. It's a very coarsely flour made of cassava, which is an ingredient typical from South America, and in Brazil we use it a lot in many different dishes. So apart of these two main ingredients, we are going to also need some kale that's going to be cooked with both onions, a bit of red chili, garlic, and spring onions, and some parsley as well that we are going to use to garnish. One important thing is, like in Brazilian food, we basically cook everything with garlic and onions. So on top of those main ingredients, we're going to also need some smoked paprika, ground cumin, black pepper, and salt. So to complement these ingredients, we are going to go to the EcoCentre community garden outside here to collect some more kale and also parsley for our recipe. So as a first step, we're going to have to cook the beans, and for that we're going to take also 2 bay leaves. So we're going to put straight in the water. You normally put 1 cup of beans to 4 cups of water, and you add the bay leaves, and then you just turn the fire on and let it cook for around 30 to 40 minutes, depending on your pan and the power of your cooktop. So while the beans are cooking with the bay leaves, we are going to chop the other ingredients. Let's start with the onions. So basically, I was saying that this dish is something that we eat a lot in Brazil. And I come from the capital, from Belo Horizonte, which, as I mentioned, you find this basically in every restaurant that you go that is from typical, that we call comida mineira, which is the typical food from Minas Gerais. You find tropeiro. But the best experience of it is to having it in the countryside. So picture this place. I lived most of my life in Belo Horizonte, but also part of it, I was living in the country house that my parents have in the country, which is a very mountainous area with beautiful, beautiful landscape. And you have loads of farms there, and you can go to many restaurants that are located inside of those farms. So having a tropeiro in this kind of scenario, having a cachaça with it, which is the spirit that I mentioned before, that is very typical for my region as well, it's part of the full experience of having a tropeiro. Here the chili is important that you go with the amount of chili that you can tolerate. I like chili, but I don't like much to have the seeds, because I think it's just too strong for me. So I'm going to use just the tip of it without the seeds. Now we're going to get the herbs and the kale that we got from the garden and wash it up before we start chopping it. So now we're going to just chop the kale. So basically important that we're not going to use the stems, only the leafy part. So we can just remove the stems here. Zero waste tip here. You can always use the stems to make some green juice later. So one interesting thing about this dish is the way it used to be prepared in the colonial period. This was around the 17th century. So they didn't have refrigeration or anything. So all the ingredients we have here, apart from the kale, they can be preserved during a long period. So that's why the tropeiros used to eat this food with so much frequency, because it's just easy to transport and carry around. And here we have, here's your green juice. And here we're going to, again, just very roughly chop it. And this is going to be the last thing, the second last thing that we are going to put in the pan. So now we're just going to put this aside, the kale aside. Let me just grab a bowl. I'm going to put this on the side, and we are going to chop the parsley and some spring onion too. So now we're going to drain the beans. Just going to pop it here. And important here, we have to find the bay leaves that we used to cook it. So I'm just going to find them and remove the 2 bay leaves, because we don't want to be chewing this during our tropeiro experience. So now we just put this aside and we go to the next step. So now we're going to use some olive oil, and we're going to saute the onions and the garlic that we've chopped earlier. Now we're going to add the chili. the beans that we're draining here. So we just pop it here. And now we're going to add all the other ingredients. So we're going to put salt. I'm a very low salt person, so I don't put much. And we're going to put the smoked paprika, the cumin, and also the black pepper. And then we're just going to stir everything together. So since the beans are cooked, we can now straight away put the kale with it too. Let's grab the kale. Put this lower a little bit. And here we just let the kale become like very bright green, because that's going to be the sign that it's ready. So now I turned off the heat and I'm going to bring this here, that we're going to add the other important ingredient, which is the farofa. So we just basically, you can put as much as you want here. I like it, it's a kind of a dry dish. I like it dry and crunchy, so I put it kind of a lot, but it's up to you how much you want. And then you're just going to stir it together. And it looks like this very funny thing here. That's a mix of everything together. So now it's ready. We're just going to place it in a bowl. So I normally eat this as a main dish, but you can use it as a side dish as well. Some people even would put fried egg on top. But for the vegan version, that's the way I recommend eating it. So we have it here, and then we just add some herbs, the parsley and the spring onion that we chopped earlier. And we put a dash of olive oil on top. And there you go, there is your Feijão Tropeiro.
That was fantastic, Fernanda. I loved every single second of it. There are some really lovely questions that are coming in through the chat right now, especially one that was right at the top here. They said, okay, I'm hungry now. Have you discovered a good Brazilian restaurant we could visit in Melbourne?
Yes, indeed, there is my favorite one. It's called Bossa Nova Café. It's in Carlton. If you Google, I don't know the address exactly right now, but if you Google it, you're going to find it. And they do have Feijão Tropeiro there, the original recipe with meat in it. And plus other recipes that are also amazing. So I totally recommend anyone who likes Brazilian food to go there to check it out. And
awesome. Yeah, no, I definitely want to go there now after seeing that. I feel like I could smell it as well. You know, it just emanated out of everything, out of the computer itself. I had a question I wanted to ask you, and I don't know what your opinion is on it, but chilies, I love them. I love them hot. Do you think the hotter the better, or are you just not a fan of chilies?
I don't know. I think in this one, the cumin play a very important role, and I'm afraid that too much chili might kind of cancel it.
Yeah.
So I would go a bit lighter in the chili in this recipe, so you can fully feel the cumin and the taste of other ingredients as well. So I would put the chili enough so you can feel that kick, but not enough, not too much that you have like your nose running or anything.
Yeah, you don't want the Carolina Reaper, the hottest
You don't want
chili
to make
in the world.
it like a typical Mexican dish. In Brazil, we don't use chili too much, mostly Northeast Brazil. We have a lot of dishes, but in Southeast, we are very, very conservative with chili sauces. So that's why to not take out the characteristic of the region as well, I would say.
That's great. For those of the viewers that are watching right now and they aren't too familiar with where Brazil might be in a world and a geographic position, could you give them an idea of exactly where it is that you come from, especially in Brazil?
Sure. If you have, Ella, if you could just share the map.
I'll just get it up now.
Please, yeah, then I can show a little bit, because Brazil is a huge country with such a rich history. So basically here you have in different colors the regions of Brazil. And as you can see in the yellow, you find MG is Minas Gerais, SP is São Paulo, and GO in the orange section is Goiânia. Goiânia is the capital. And those are the three states that I mentioned in the video that had the roots where the tropeiros, those merchants used to travel to bring goods towards the inside of the country to sell different goods and produce. So these three states are particularly relevant for those people, for tropeiros, and for this history of economic development in Brazil. And I come from MG, from Minas Gerais, which is that big state that's like bigger than Germany, for you to have an idea like of scale, geographic scale. I come from the capital of this city. So this gives you an overview how actually it worked. And I don't know if you know much about Brazilian history, but Brazil was colonized, and the first big cities were located in the coast. So this means that the development of the interior of Brazil came way after. So this means that tropeiro people, they were also very relevant actors in developing and bringing services to those more internal and remote regions of Brazil at that time. Great. Hope I could clarify some ideas of how does it work geographically, what is the importance of this dish in the geography of Brazil as well.
Oh, I think you definitely did. I can't pronounce it for tropeiro.
Tropeiro.
No, I'll get it one day. It won't be today though, but that's okay. There was another lovely question here, and I mean, do you have a favorite herb that you like adding to your dishes? Is it like a typical Fernanda kind of touch that you give to things?
I wouldn't say that I have a typical touch. I really love herbs in general. Like I'm really fan of gardening, especially herbs. For this dish, I think one that can't miss is the spring onions. You can forget the parsley, but you can't forget the spring onions in my opinion. And honestly, I don't think any other herbs would suit this dish very well. I think maybe coriander, but I think the only two that would actually do the perfect mix would be these two. But of course, nowadays we can do fusion and adjust all these recipes. So I encourage everyone to, if you really like a herb, to give it a go. Maybe you're going to just create like a contemporary version of Feijão Tropeiro, maybe an Australian version of it.
It's interesting you bring that up. Is the one that you make in Australia just as good as the one that can be made back home? Or is it just like because your grandmother made it with love and it's just slightly different? It's never quite the same when you come to a new country.
Yeah, it's different. It's different because in Brazil, we use a different kind of bean as well, which would be the closest to our red bean here. And also in Brazil, people normally do the farofa from scratch. So this means that you get the fresh cassava flour, and then you're going to put oil or butter and eggs and onion, and then you're going to prepare everything from scratch. So it definitely tastes much better. Here I used a farofa that comes already ready. It's kind of an industrialized version of it, which does the job, but it's not exactly the same. It's perfect for people like me who doesn't have like time, like loads of time of being cooking like a 3-hour meal. So in this case, the farofa that is sold already ready is the best option.
And just a reminder for those of us who are very uneducated and don't know what farofa is, could you just explain what that is again?
So farofa is a flour, is a cassava flour. Cassava is a root that comes from South America. And basically you have to cook it through because I don't know if everybody knows, but cassava has cyanide in it. So you have to cook, otherwise it's really a poisonous plant. So after you cook through and you have to let it dry, you can make a flour of it. And that's a very kind of coarse kind of flour, and that's what we use in this dish and many other dishes in Brazil too. Actually, farofa we put in almost everything that has beans. We have farofa on the side or mix it with it.
So are there any places that you could recommend you could buy this special flour, the farofa, at all? Is there anywhere in Melbourne you can, like, because I have no idea off the top of my head.
You have like Latin American shops in general you can find. Again, like Bossa Nova Cafe is my go-to. Maybe I'm making too much advertisement of them here. I'm sorry for the other Brazilian restaurants that I know that exist too and shops. But I know that they also have like a small shop there, and including that farofa I bought there. So you should just try to look for those places, and very likely you're going to be able to find it.
Awesome sauce. Sounds, I'm just so hungry right now. We had to have this webinar during dinner, didn't we? You know, just as I'm getting absolute hungriest right now. So a few other questions have come through as well. One person is really curious as to what brought you here to Australia in the first place. Was it the lack of farofa, the really good one that you could find, or was it something else?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't get it.
What brought you here to Australia?
What brought me to Australia? That was my PhD research. So what brought me to Australia was RMIT. Brought me to Australia.
You mentioned it very briefly just before the webinar. It sounds fascinating, and I know it's a bit of a segue, but can you give a bit of an explanation to the audience as to exactly what it is that you're doing right now?
Yes, I'm doing my PhD research on integrated risk governance in the Pacific. So basically how Pacific countries are governing risk, both from climate change perspective, but also disasters coming from other hazards, and how this plays out with international cooperation agencies. So basically, I come from an international cooperation background. I'm a biologist originally, so I studied biology, but I ended up working with international cooperation for environmental issues. And yeah, and now I'm doing my PhD in this topic until 2022. I'm hanging around studying this.
Probably a good thing to hang around Australia for the meantime.
Yeah,
with
definitely.
everything that's going on right now. I also wanted to ask the question, and this was one that I was thinking of. Do you have a favorite dish? Is it what you've been describing right now, or is there one in the back of your mind? If you're on death row, you could have one last meal. What would it be?
Oh, God.
Put you on the
I have
spot.
so many meals, and not necessarily they're all from Brazil, because I'm a person who really, really loves food. And I would probably have at least 20 last meals if I was in a death row. Probably they would give up on killing me for so much requests I would have. But I think from Brazilian ones, tropeiro is definitely one that I do a lot. I really love it because it's very easy to cook, and it's very healthy, and it tastes amazing. I love pão de queijo, which is another thing that comes from my region. With the translation, it's called cheese bread, which is something that's delicious too. A little bit more complicated to do, but equally delicious. I absolutely love tacos. I lived in Mexico, and then that's why when you said about chili, like it really, I love it. I love very, very hot food too. So yeah, I think
I love sweating. Like it's just the best thing when you eat
for
chili
me, like
and
the
then it just like
sensation.
the mucus comes out of the nose because it's just so hot.
Yeah, they call it when you get enchilado, that you like that your nose is running, that the heartbeat is kind of racing. So like a full detox experience.
100% with that. I definitely feel detoxed after every single chili
Yeah.
experience that I have. So, I mean, for somebody who wouldn't be familiar with eating too many chilies, eating the dish that you've just described before, do you think they'd get the chili sweats from it?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I think I mentioned in the video too that I recommend to remove the seeds. So you only have like the chili taste, but you don't have like the very intense flavor of it. And actually in this dish, the chili is just kind of a touch. It's really, really just a touch on the taste. So don't expect being sweating and doing a full detox with this one. Expect to be feeling fully nourished, because beans are a very good source of protein. So that's the kind of dish that I eat when I'm doing detox or I'm doing some diet, because you have a lot of protein condensed in a place. And with kale and the farofa gives you that touch of carbohydrate to just keep you on going. So it's a very, very healthy meal, I would say. And actually, you can also eat it cold. So either as a salad or warm, it doesn't matter. Both ways, it is very, very yum.
I'm really shocked that you're not a chef. We talked about how you're pursuing your PhD at the moment, because one of the questions that popped up just before was, are you a cook as your day job? We know that's not the case, but why not cooking? Why didn't you go down that path?
No, I just loved my job too much, and I never thought about alternatives to international cooperation. To be honest, but I do like to cook. I do like to cook my own food. I do like to know where my food is coming from. I do talk with my plants, my herbs, and when I'm cooking, so it's almost like a relationship. I do enjoy going out and having dinners in restaurants as well, but for me, there's nothing compared to a home cooked meal. And I really like to explore kitchen and explore recipes and try different things. But every time that I can, basically.
Do you often sing to the vegetables? Because I do. I often sing different melodies
Yes.
too. So.
Oh, I do sing for them. I normally sing more for the living plants.
Yeah.
Like not the ones that are already chopped, but when I'm collecting them, I'm already, it's funny, but I do talk to them and talk to the plagues that sometimes just kind of infest them. So yeah, I do have a relationship, like a special relationship with all of them.
Yeah, a lot of my colleagues, I never shut up when I sing. Like I just constantly keep on singing. I'm sure the tech people right now would just be like, yeah, you sing a lot, Ben. I have no idea when I get home and I start singing to my plants as well. There was another question that came up that I think would be really interesting. You said the dish is special just to the one region. Are there versions special to other regions around Brazil?
Of this dish, as far as I know, don't. You can find Feijão Tropeiro in my state everywhere. And I think nowadays, because everything became kind of this cosmopolitan thing, if you go to South Brazil, extreme south of Brazil or extreme north, you might find a restaurant or other that does it as well. But Minas Gerais, if you go to the tiniest village and you ask for a Feijão Tropeiro, they will manage to get you one, basically, because it's just so rooted in the culture and in the things that people have in the vegetable gardens. Like everybody that I know that has a vegetable garden grows kale, for example. It's a mandatory thing. We have a different kind of kale in Brazil. It's a big leaf, flat big leaf, than the ones that we normally have here in the supermarket. So I think it's really, really part of being Mineiro, which is the name of the people who comes from the state.
I got to admit, I'm not a big fan of kale, to be honest with you, but
No,
I would very much love to try everything that you've said so far. So we have another question that's come through with Mariana just before. What's your favorite Brazilian dessert?
Oh, brigadeiro. Brigadeiro is a chocolate thing made with condensed milk. It's basically butter, condensed milk, and chocolate powder, and then you cook and mix everything, and then you just make small balls like truffles of it, and it's just so amazing. And there is like derivations of that called palla italiana that you can put some cookies together. Yeah, now I feel like eating it. And I don't have the ingredients to cook it here.
Scheduling this during dinner time. Oh boy, I'm so hungry right now. So that's awesome. Well, I'm really hungry right now. There's another question here as well. Do you grow your own veggies at home, or you just go to the shop and buy them? What do you prefer to do?
Yeah, the reality is I have absolutely no sun in my backyard. So I do grow some herbs, some mint, lemon balm, like more like tea stuff. And my partner has more sun at his balcony. So sometimes we manage to grow tomatoes and lettuces. But my source of garden is the EcoCentre. So I work as a volunteer there. So every time I go work, I end up like taking some leaves to make a salad. So, and apart from that, I'm reliant on markets. So Vic Market or South Melbourne, or one of those markets is always my preference. But yeah.
Yeah, the South Melbourne one is fantastic. I love going there, seeing all the fish as well, and all the different meats and cuts that you can get. It's really exciting there. So you're telling me that if you had a bigger backyard, you'd plant pretty much everything you possibly could. If you did have that bigger backyard, what would be the go-to thing for you to plant? Because for me, my Italian ancestry, it'd be tomatoes everywhere, just completely adorning the entire backyard. But what about yourself?
Yeah, I think I would have all possible herbs that I could grow, including lavender and calendulas, things for tea, because I'm also a tea lover. So those would be a go-to. I would definitely have potatoes, pumpkins, zucchinis. What else that I love? Cucumbers, lettuces for sure too. Lettuces is my sadness to have to buy a full lettuce, because it's so difficult. If I don't share it with anyone, it just wastes, because I don't eat salad every day. So
I agree.
definitely
It wilts after
lettuce.
a while. It just looks kind of sad. The more you don't use it, I feel guilty whenever it's there.
Exactly. So I would definitely have those things, just so you can just collect bits of it and let it keep growing. I would have kale, because different from you, I really, really like kale. And I think kale is just the perfect plant to have, because I like it in salads, in soups, in green juices. It just serves all the purposes for me. And yeah, and if I managed avocado tree, that's the greatest plan of my
wouldn't
partner.
that be amazing?
He has two babies here waiting like to find soil somewhere.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you in that sentiment, 100%. In terms of growing things in the backyard, you said that you volunteer at the EcoCentre and you help out with the garden as well. Do you have any tips for people that are growing things in their backyards and how they might do it a little bit better?
That's a good question, because I'm also like, I love gardening, but I'm not like a most expert on it. I just kind of learn by doing and chatting with people. I know, like, for a very shady garden like I have at my place, it can be very tricky, but aloe veras love it. So it's a go-to if you don't have much sun. Aloe veras and those more like less sensitive herbs are quite good to grow anywhere, like mint, lemon balm. They are pretty good ones. And yeah, and actually always try to do your own compost or have a worm farm, it always helps you to keep your soil nourished and running, so you don't have to kind of throw away and buy new soil from time to time. So yeah, for me, it's learning by doing, and every day learning something different and learning with my mistakes too.
I feel exactly the same. I grew up with my grandparents and they had this huge yard, and I remember they just used to throw us in the backyard and we just had to get dirty, pick the beans all day. Hated beans by the end of it. I was just like, I don't want to pick beans anymore. Another lovely question has come through. Somebody said, loving all the stories, Fernanda. What sort of celebrations involve around food, plants, and nature in Brazil? Are there any big celebrations in Brazil that involve those three?
There is something that we call Festa Junina, which is a typical party that we do in June or July, which is our winter in Brazil. And basically, that's my memory of very typical, traditional, local food that we have. And it's very kind of things that you only eat in that time of the year. So like as dessert, we have something that's called Pajamalaki, which is a mix of peanuts and molasses. We have particular kind of soups, one also made of beans that we call like sopa de feijão or caldo de feijão. We have also typical beverages for this time of the year because it's very cold, so you have to have cachaça, which in my case, I don't wait for winter for that. I really love cachaça. It's kind of my medicine, which is a sort of a spirit. It's made of sugar cane, but it doesn't taste like rum. It tastes completely different. And for me, it's like the perfect thing when you eat too much tropeiro or too much of whatever. You just take like one shot of this and you sip it slowly, and it makes the magic of helping your digestion.
So that answered the second question. I have the favorite alcohol of Brazil as well. So that's been answered there.
Yeah, that's cachaça for sure. That's cachaça for sure. And in this June party, we do a special one that's called quentão, which is basically a hot cachaça drink. It looks a bit like a hot wine, but it's made of cachaça and cinnamon sticks and cloves. It's very, very rich and winter flavored.
Awesome. That was such a great answer that I enjoyed every second of it. So couple more questions until we have to wrap up, unfortunately. I'll make this the second last one for today, but really intriguing question. Have you discovered a dish here in Australia that you never knew about that you've wanted to share with your families, friends and family back in Brazil? Sausage roll, sausage and bread, lamington, something like that, something silly, or...
Do you know, like banana bread? It's not that I didn't know the existence of banana bread, but I was never exposed of so much banana bread in everywhere, every corner. So for me, like banana bread was a discovery here. And I think that's the most appreciated dessert I have here, even more than lamington. I know that lamington is maybe more original than banana bread, but banana bread is kind of, I crave it from time to time. So I would say that's my favorite Australian food, and I'm not even sure if it's Australian. I don't think it is. But I'm going to bring me as an Australian memory. For me, it's going to be the banana bread.
That's great. I love it. I don't know about you, but I always have bananas left over, and then I just tend to give them to my mum. And I'm like, Mum, look at all these old brown spotted bananas that I've got lying around the place. You can just make so much banana bread and cupcakes out of this. It's the best. Last thing, if you wanted to give people one key message from this webinar and what you've talked about today, what would that be?
I think first, like I mentioned in the video too, when we are cooking, always think of the basic zero waste rule. So I think every part of the veggies can be done something with it. Sometimes, like the kale, we are not putting the stems in the dish because it doesn't look nice and doesn't taste great because it's a bit too hard. But you can always use it for a juice later on. And I think like looking when you're cooking at your food and you can look at it and really try to be creative and thinking of ways of reducing your food waste is a good deal. And if you don't have a worm farm or a compost or anything related, I do at my place what they call the Lasagna Method. You just have like a big pot and you put your like food scraps in very small pieces and you put soil on top. And then you just do it like stacking it as a lasagna. And then after 6 months, everything is kind of compost, like microorganisms, water, wind, just do the magic. And then you can use it later. So I think that's the message I leave. And yeah, and eat healthy and work in gardens if you love it, and try to chat with your neighbor and see if they have any like surplus that they could share with you too.
And to have as much fun as we've had here tonight, that's for sure. I am starving right now, I can tell you right now. Awesome. We might have to wrap it up there. So just a reminder that the recipe instructions will be sent out via email in the next couple of days for those of you who are attending this webinar. This recording is also available on our YouTube channel, EcoCentre TV, plus previous sessions if you've missed them. If you are interested further, there are a bunch more events. You can go to ecocentre.com/CNF 2021 for more info. Thank you, Fernanda. I had a great time.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone.
I will leave you to